I just drove, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. The message from my daughter Emily was still glowing on my phone screen. Dad, help. Grandview Trail. Can't walk. That was 40 minutes ago. 40 minutes of my heart slamming against my ribs as I forced my truck along the twisting mountain roads outside Kelowna, British Columbia. When I finally spotted her SUV abandoned on the roadside, the driver's door hanging wide open, I didn't stop to think. I grabbed my flashlight and rushed straight into the woods. The beam of light found her face first, my Emily, 29 years old, lying in a heap of damp leaves about 20 meters off the trail. Her leg was twisted at an angle that made my stomach lurch. Blood had tangled through her blonde hair. But what truly froze my heart wasn't the injuries. It was what she whispered the moment she saw me. Dad, Ryan's mother. She said I deserved this. I dropped to my knees beside her, pulling off my jacket and wrapping it around her shaking body. What are you talking about? Who told you that? Margaret, she breathed, her voice barely louder than the wind whispering through the pines. She said, my kind doesn't belong in their family. She said this was God correcting a mistake. My kind. Those two words hit me like a freight train. Emily's mother, my late wife Aiko, had been Japanese-Canadian. Emily had inherited her mother's striking features. Dark eyes, straight black hair, a quiet elegance I had always admired. I had been proud when she married Ryan Whitmore 3 years ago. The Whitmores were one of those old Vancouver Island families, wealthy, influential, polished. Ryan had always seemed devoted to her, but now, here in the October cold, my daughter was revealing something I had been too blind to notice. Can you move? I asked, quickly checking her injuries. Her left leg was clearly broken. A deep cut split her forehead, and scratches covered her arms. But she was breathing, conscious, alive. I don't think so, she whispered, tears filling her eyes. Dad, the baby. Everything inside me stopped. What baby? I'm 12 weeks pregnant. Her hand moved protectively over her stomach even now. I haven't told Ryan yet. I was going to tell him tonight, but Margaret, she somehow found out. She called me this afternoon, said it was urgent, asked me to meet her at this trail. She said it was about a surprise for Ryan. Emily's voice broke. When I got here, she was waiting. She wasn't alone. There was a man with her. They pushed me, Dad. They pushed me off the trail and drove away in my car. They left me here to die. I had been a carpenter for 40 years, building homes, decks, furniture. I had always believed in creating things, not destroying them. But in that moment, holding my broken daughter in the darkness of the woods, something cold and sharp formed inside my chest. Someone had tried to kill my child and my grandchild. We're getting you out of here, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. And then we're going to deal with this. I managed to carry Emily back to my truck. She was small like her mother, barely 5'3", yet every step felt as heavy as carrying the entire world. I drove straight to Kelowna General Hospital, ignoring every speed limit along the way. The whole drive, Emily drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling about Margaret, about Ryan, about how hard she had tried to be a good wife. The emergency staff took her in immediately. Broken tibia, fractured wrist, concussion, severe bruising. But somehow, miraculously, the baby was unharmed. The ultrasound showed a strong heartbeat. The doctor called it a miracle, saying the way Emily had landed must have shielded her abdomen. I called it luck, or maybe Aiko watching over our daughter from wherever she was now. While Emily was being treated, I sat in the waiting room and started making calls. First to the RCMP detachment, then to my brother David, who lived 2 hours away in Vernon. David and I had grown up in the Okanagan, sons of a logger who taught us that family was everything, and that you never let anyone harm your blood. I'm on my way, David said the moment I finished explaining. Don't do anything until I get there. But I wasn't going to sit still. While Emily was sedated and resting, I drove to the house she shared with Ryan, a beautiful craftsman-style home in West Kelowna that Ryan's parents had helped them purchase. I had a key because I'd built their custom deck last summer. Ryan was at his law firm in Vancouver and wouldn't be home until tomorrow. Perfect. The house looked exactly the way Emily always kept it, spotless, warm, the kind of place that should have been filled with love. I went straight to the office. Ryan's laptop was sitting on the desk, and Emily had once told me his password when I needed to send myself some deck plans. I opened it, not entirely sure what I was searching for, only knowing I needed to understand what had been happening to my daughter. What I found made my blood run cold. Email folders, dozens of them, exchanges between Ryan and his mother, Margaret, spanning 3 years. The subject lines alone told the story. The Emily problem. Correcting the mistake. Solutions. I started reading, and with each email the picture became clearer and more horrifying. 3 years ago, shortly after the engagement, Margaret had written, "Ryan, I have tried to be supportive, but I must be honest. This girl is not suitable for our family. Her blood is mixed. The Whitmore name has remained pure for 7 generations. I will not allow you to dilute our lineage with Asian ancestry. End this now, and I will secure the partnership at the firm you've been wanting." Ryan's reply, "Mother, I love Emily. I'm not leaving her. Please try to be reasonable." But Margaret had never been reasonable. The emails continued, growing sharper over time. She had even hired a private investigator to dig into Emily's past, found nothing, because my daughter was everything a person should be. Then she changed tactics. She began befriending Emily, inviting her to lunches and shopping trips, all while sending Ryan detailed messages cataloging every so-called flaw she noticed. She uses chopsticks at Japanese restaurants. How embarrassing. She wants to name a future daughter Sakura after her grandmother. Absolutely not. She mentioned celebrating Obon. We cannot allow Buddhist traditions in our Christian household. My hands trembled as I scrolled through 3 years of poison. But then it got worse. 6 months ago, the tone shifted. Margaret had learned Emily was trying to get pregnant. The emails became urgent, frantic. "Ryan, you must stop this immediately. If she has a child, that mixed-blood child will be part of our family forever. Our legacy will be ruined." And Ryan's response, the one that made me want to smash the screen. "I know, Mother. I'm handling it. I've been replacing her prenatal vitamins with placebos. It's been slowing things down, replacing her vitamins. My son-in-law had been sabotaging my daughter's chances of having a baby for 6 months because his mother demanded it. But 3 weeks ago, Emily had changed doctors and gotten new prescriptions. She got pregnant, and Margaret found out. The most recent email was sent today at 2 p.m., just 6 hours ago. It's done. I've arranged everything with Lucas. It will look like an accident on the trail. No one questions a fall. We'll say she went hiking alone and slipped. By the time anyone finds her, it'll be too late. Ryan, you'll be free to find a proper wife. Trust me, this is for the best. That baby would have ruined everything." Lucas. I remembered Emily mentioning that name before. Lucas Grant, Margaret's personal assistant. A man in his 30s who had worked for the family for years. The same man who had helped Margaret push my daughter off that trail. I took photos of every single email. Then I downloaded the entire database onto a USB drive and kept digging. Inside Ryan's desk drawer, I uncovered even more evidence. Bank statements showing repeated transfers to Lucas, $20,000 over the past month. A burner phone containing text messages between Margaret and Lucas, discussing the plan in detail, choosing the location, making sure the trail would be empty on a Thursday afternoon. Then I found the piece that made everything fall into place. A manila folder hidden at the bottom of the drawer, labeled Mother's Insurance. Inside were medical records. Margaret Whitmore had stage 3 ovarian cancer. She'd been diagnosed 8 months ago and given 12 to 18 months to live. She had been seeing oncologists in Seattle, keeping it secret from everyone except Ryan. Suddenly, the emails made horrifying sense. Margaret was dying. She wanted to make sure the Whitmore legacy survived her. She wanted Ryan to remarry someone she approved of, someone who would give her pure grandchildren she would never meet but could die believing existed. She had tried to murder my daughter because she believed she was running out of time. I heard a vehicle pull into the driveway. My hand instinctively moved to my phone, ready to call the police. But then I recognized David's truck. My brother walked in, took one look at my face, and asked quietly, "What did you find?" I showed him everything. We sat at Emily's kitchen table, the same one I had helped her choose at a furniture store in Vancouver, and went through the evidence line by line. David had always been the hot-headed one, the brother who used to get into fights defending me when we were kids. I watched his face shift from red to pale to something hard as stone. "We call the RCMP right now," he said. "This is attempted murder, conspiracy. They'll arrest all of them." "We will," I replied. "But first, we're going to do something else." David looked at me, and I saw the same expression he had when we were 12 and 15, when a group of older boys cornered us behind our school, mocking us because our mother was Métis, saying we weren't pure enough for their version of Canada. Back then, he had glanced at me and said, "You thinking what I'm thinking?" 35 years later, I gave a slow nod. "I'm thinking we make sure they pay. Truly pay." Here's what we did. First, we contacted the RCMP and filed a formal report, submitting every piece of evidence. Detective Laura Park at the Kelowna detachment was thorough, professional, and visibly furious on Emily's behalf. Within hours, warrants were issued for Margaret Whitmore and Lucas Grant. But before those warrants were carried out, David and I made a few calls of our own. When you've lived in British Columbia your whole life and spent 40 years building homes, you end up knowing people, lots of people. Some of them have connections, platforms, and audiences. I called an old friend of mine, Daniel Brooks, a journalist at the Vancouver Sunday, and gave him the full story. Every email, every document, every detail. "This is about racism, attempted murder, and the abuse of wealth and privilege," I told him. "This is about what happens when hatred is allowed to grow inside a family." Emily's mother had been Japanese-Canadian. Her grandparents had been placed in internment camps during World War II, and now, 80 years later, their great-granddaughter had been targeted by the same kind of prejudice. Daniel ran the story. By the next morning, it was front-page news. A prominent Vancouver Island family accused of attempted murder fueled by racial hatred. The article laid everything out: Margaret's emails, Ryan's involvement, the attack on the trail, and Emily's pregnancy. Daniel even uncovered two other women who had dated members of the Whitmore family years earlier and reported similar harassment for being unsuitable. The story spread rapidly. Within 24 hours, it became national news. Major networks picked it up, investigative segments aired, and social media erupted. The Whitmore family name, something Margaret had been so desperate to keep pure, became publicly associated with racism and violence. Meanwhile, David had made calls of his own. He contacted a lawyer friend who specialized in civil litigation. "We're suing for everything," the lawyer said firmly. "Attempted murder, assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud, conspiracy. We will name Margaret, Ryan, Lucas, and the family business. By the time this is over, your daughter will be fully compensated for what they did." The RCMP arrested Margaret Whitmore at her Oceanside estate 2 days later. She was sitting calmly on her terrace, overlooking the water, sipping tea as if nothing had happened. News crews had already gathered outside since the story broke. The footage of her being led away in handcuffs, her expression shocked and indignant, played across every channel. Lucas Grant tried to flee. He made it as far as the ferry terminal before police caught him. The moment he was placed in an interrogation room, he confessed to everything, providing even more details about how Margaret had planned the attack and how she promised him $50,000 once Emily was gone and Ryan was free to remarry. Ryan Whitmore was arrested at his law office in Vancouver. He was charged as an accessory for sabotaging Emily's prenatal vitamins and failing to report a conspiracy to commit murder. His legal career ended before the handcuffs were even secured. The Law Society of British Columbia suspended his license pending investigation, and his firm removed his name from the letterhead within hours. The trial was scheduled for 8 months later, but events moved faster than anyone expected. Margaret's cancer progressed rapidly, likely worsened by stress. She died in custody 4 months after her arrest, still insisting she had done nothing wrong and that she had only been protecting her family. No one mourned her except Ryan, and even he looked strangely relieved when it was over. Lucas Grant pleaded guilty to attempted murder, assault, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 23 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for 15. During sentencing, he apologized to Emily, claiming he had been blinded by loyalty to a manipulative employer. Emily did not accept the apology. Neither did I. Ryan Whitmore attempted to fight the charges. He argued that he had no knowledge of his mother's plan and that replacing the vitamins had only been a way to delay pregnancy, not cause harm. The jury did not believe him. He was convicted of conspiracy to commit assault and criminal negligence and sentenced to 12 years. His lawyer requested a lighter sentence, arguing he had not physically harmed anyone. The judge, a 60-year-old Indigenous woman named Justice Eleanor Greyhawk, looked at him coldly and said, "You betrayed your wife in the most fundamental way possible. You chose your mother's prejudice over your wife's life. There is no justification for that." The civil lawsuit proved even more devastating. Our attorney, Isabella Cruz, was relentless. She demonstrated that the Whitmore family business, a real estate empire, had been directly used to fund the conspiracy. Development company valued at $60 million had been used for years to finance Margaret's schemes, including paying Lucas and hiring private investigators. The judge awarded Emily $35 million in damages, which effectively destroyed the Whitmore business. Ryan's trust fund was seized. The Oceanside estate was auctioned off. Everything Margaret had tried to protect was scattered and gone. But the part that mattered most to me came 3 months after the attack. On a cold January morning at Kelowna General Hospital, Emily gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Aiko Rose, after her mother and after the wild roses that grow in the Okanagan Hills. I stood in the delivery room holding Emily's hand, watching my granddaughter enter the world with a thick head of black hair and her grandmother's eyes. Emily had filed for divorce from Ryan while she was still recovering in the hospital. It was finalized before Aiko Rose was born. Ryan sent letters from prison begging for forgiveness, asking to be part of his daughter's life. Emily burned every single one without opening them. She said her daughter didn't need a father who chose racism over her existence. "She has you," Emily told me, "and Uncle David, and a whole community who will love her exactly as she is." Now, 2 years later, Emily and Aiko Rose live in a beautiful home in Summerland overlooking Okanagan Lake. I built it myself, every beam and nail placed with care. David lives just down the road. We share Sunday dinners, the three of us, and little Aiko, who's just learning to walk, wobbling on unsteady legs and laughing at everything. Emily went back to school and earned her master's degree in social work. Today, she works with survivors of domestic violence and racial discrimination, helping others escape situations like the one she endured. She speaks at conferences and tells her story, and every time she does, more people find the courage to speak up. The Whitmore name, which Margaret had been so desperate to preserve, is now referenced as a warning. Law schools discuss the case in ethics courses. Therapists cite it in conversations about family systems and generational abuse. News outlets still mention it when covering stories about interracial relationships and acceptance. As for me, I'm 63 now. I still build furniture, but these days most of what I make is for Aiko Rose. Wooden blocks, a rocking horse, a little play kitchen. Last week I started building her a 3-story dollhouse with real windows and a hand-carved staircase. She stood beside me while I worked, her dark eyes serious, and said her first full sentence, "Grandpa make house." Yes, baby girl. Grandpa builds houses, safe houses, filled with love, where everyone belongs, no matter what their blood looks like or where their ancestors came from. Sometimes I think about Margaret Whitmore in that hospital bed, cancer consuming her body, knowing her plan had failed. She tried to erase what she called impurity from her family line, and instead she destroyed that line herself. Ryan will never have children with a violent felony conviction. The Whitmore name ends with him in a prison cell. But my family, the family Margaret tried to erase, is thriving. Aiko Rose is growing up strong, surrounded by love, learning both English and Japanese through the language program Emily enrolled her in. She will grow up knowing that her great-grandparents survived internment camps, that her grandmother Aiko was deeply loved, and that her mother stood up to hatred and won. Let me be clear about something. Blood does not make a family, and it certainly does not make someone superior or inferior. The idea of pure bloodlines is a myth. It always has been. Canada was built from the blending of cultures, languages, and traditions. That isn't weakness, it's strength. If someone in your family spreads poison about race, about purity, about who belongs and who doesn't, stop it immediately. Don't assume it will fade with time, or that love alone will fix prejudice without action. It won't. Margaret's hatred grew for 3 years before it turned into attempted murder. Ryan enabled it by staying silent, and he paid for that silence. Stand up. Speak out. Protect the people you love. even if it means standing against your own relatives. If you're in a relationship where someone undermines you, sabotages you, or treats you as less than, leave. Emily didn't know Ryan was switching her vitamins. She didn't know his mother was planning her death, but she sensed something was wrong. Weeks before the attack, she told me she felt uneasy around Margaret, that something felt off. She should have trusted that instinct. Don't ignore yours. Your life could depend on it. And to anyone who has ever been told their blood is dirty, their heritage is wrong, or their existence is a mistake, you are not the problem. The hatred aimed at you is the problem. Your mixed heritage, whatever it may be, is something to honor, not hide. Aiko Rose will grow up knowing that her great-grandfather was white, her great-grandmother was Métis, her grandmother was Japanese-Canadian, and her mother carries all of that within her. She will understand that this mixture makes her extraordinary, not lesser. She will know that when hatred tried to erase her before she was even born, her family fought back and won. That is the legacy that matters. Not an imaginary pure lineage, but the real, complicated, beautiful legacy of love, resistance, and survival. I'm sitting on my porch right now, watching the sun sink behind the lake while Emily pushes Aiko on the swing I built last month. My granddaughter's laughter drifts through the air, bright and unaware of the darkness that once threatened her existence. Margaret Whitmore tried to preserve something that never truly existed. What she destroyed was real: her freedom, her reputation, her family. What we built afterward is real too, and stronger than anything she could have imagined. Hatred destroys the one who carries it far more than the one it targets. Love, real love, the kind that stands up and fights back, creates something lasting. The Whitmore name may fade into history as a warning, but the name Aiko Rose will continue. She will grow up, have children of her own one day, and pass down the story of how her family survived an attempt to erase them. Maybe she'll grow up in a Canada where stories like ours aren't necessary anymore, where the dangerous fiction of pure blood is finally understood for what it is, where every child's existence is celebrated instead of questioned. Until that day comes, we will keep telling this story. We will keep confronting hatred wherever it appears. We will keep building safe houses filled with love, because in the end, that's what matters. Not the color of your blood, but the strength of your heart. Not the purity of your lineage, but the depth of your compassion. Not where your ancestors began, but where you are headed and who you bring with you. Emily brought Aiko Rose into this world, despite everything that tried to stop her. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure that little girl knows she was worth fighting for, worth surviving for, worth everything. That's my story. That's my revenge. Not destruction, but creation. Not hatred answered with hatred, but hatred answered with a love so fierce it refuses to be extinguished. And you know what?